We're going to install the pedestal and steering assembly in the John Deere B. It consists of, here's the worm part of the steering mechanism. We have this all, this was wore down considerably in this area, so I had to weld it up and put it on the lathe and turn it down. It's not too bad a job. And then this bushing here that's in the steering, what is this thing called?
It's called the...
You don't know either?
It's called a steering tower.
Anyway, I think we're going to call this the tower. But anyway, this is where the steering shaft goes in there. And this bushing is not only on this plane, but it's also, you can see it from the top, it's at an angle like this, slightly. And setting that up in the milling machine to bore this out was, well, difficult, we'll say at the least. But we got her done, made a nice new bushing for it, got it matched to the steering shaft. So our first thing, the first part of this, the way I do it, is we got new races for the worm gear there to ride on. So one gets pressed into this part, and this one gets pressed into bolster, or pedestal. Bolster is an international term. We don't want to use international terminology on this, so we're going to install these races where they belong. Still got a ways to go. We'll see if I can find a brass drift here. That's what it's supposed to look like. All right, it's always seated in the shoulder there. Had to get the brass drift after it. All right. All right, so the next thing we're going to put in the steering shaft. We're not going to put any of the packing or anything in it, just the bearings, because we're wanting to set the preload on the bearings. All right, so you get the one bearing that goes here. Put it in there. It rides on this surface right here. And nothing like that. Okay. The next one goes in where our last bearing went, like so. And basically you try to get this in here without it falling down into the, see, it did it anyway, because I'd like to not put any oil or grease on these bearings just yet, because basically what we're trying to do is right here. Look over here, cameraman. See this gap right here? This is the preload for this shaft, which basically we don't want to put any preload on this, is what we're after. The idea is to have no preload, but yet no play. So I'm going to get the bolts that go in here. Paul, come on, man. We're going to get the bolts that go here and then measure this gap to figure out what thickness of shims we need to achieve what we want here. So I'm going to get the bolts. Basically, you want to tighten these two evenly. See, like, rotate this over, and it has drag on it. You want to start backing these off pretty evenly to where you want to get all the drag off the bearings. So there should be no movement this way, and the steering shaft should turn freely. See what this gap is here, and then you'll know how thick a gasket you need to make or use. We'd adjusted these bolts, and make sure that you try to get these both pretty well even when you try to figure this out. But you can see how easy that turns, but yet there's no back and forth. So that means that we got to make gaskets that's 20, 21, 22. That'd be 20, 40, 63 thousandths thick gaskets. So we'll get to working on these gaskets, and then we'll put them in and see how we did. Well, when it was all said and done, we put the gaskets in there. We measured it with the feeler's gauge, and we come up with 63 thousandths. Well, it took two 40 thousandths, which would add up to 80 thousandths, to make it work right. Because we started out with two 30 thousandths gaskets to get 60 thousandths. Well, it wouldn't even turn. So then we kept the one gasket, which was a 30 thousandths, and then we had a 40 thousandths. That was 70. It would turn, but it was tight. So we ended up going to 80 thousandths worth of gaskets. But these gaskets have, you know, a X amount of crush, you know, that they do. So maybe they crushed, we'll say 5 thousandths each one. Well, that'll get you into your 70, which would have been in the ballpark. So you don't want any drag on this. You don't want any pressure on it, but you don't want it to have any slop. So it's supposed to be zero drag on this. So that's what we did. Your mileage may vary. We're going to move on to working on getting the steering shaft in here, and we'll start on that next.
These are the Timken bearings. One's the brace and one's the bearing. 13C and 11BC.
before you put this in here, this pattern on here is not symmetrical. It's wider. You see how these are wider apart than any of the rest of them? You got to put this spacing here towards the back of the pedestal. Yeah, right. Well, okay. All right. Pump it up. Oh, put it this way. Wait, back a little. Push it this way. Wait, back a little bit. Okay, come this way. Whoop, crank it up. Oh, you gotta keep it forward though. There, oh, too far. Right there. Keep going. Oh, back up. Oh, too far. There. Oh, back it up. Too far. Right there. Now go. Come on. Okay. Let's make sure. All right. Bring her home. Okay. Whoop. Easy. All right. Next, we're going to put this eccentric on it. Now, if you look at this hole is not. Back her up, hammerman. This hole is not drilled. Probably see it better on this side. Sorry. Okay. This is called the steering eccentric. This hole on the diameter on the outside is off center from this diameter. This hole that's drilled on the inside. If you notice, it's closer to one side of it than it is the other. That way you can turn this in there and it'll make this shaft. Look at the shaft. It'll make this shaft get closer or farther away from Mr. Worm Gear, thus taking the backlash off the steering. So we're going to put this in, and it's got a space here. You got to put it in just like that. Oh, I forgot to go on this. There's a cork seal right there. That is to keep the oil from leaking around the eccentric, okay? So you put this guy down in here, and it's kind of a tight fit. Not real tight, but tight enough to... Well, I'll be jiggered. All right. I forgot something. And I can't get this thing back out. All right. Stop. All right. Back up. We got the eccentric here, and this is the shim. This shim, what its purpose is this is what gives you the, there's supposed to be a little bit of play up and down in this shaft. So what you want to have happen here, well, ideally the shim doesn't fall down there and keep it from going down into the come here. All right, try again. Anyway, there we go. All right, so we got it in there like that. We push it down to where it goes. Okay. All right, now we'll have Paul pull this up with the jack all the way until it stops. All right. Okay. Now we'll add the sector on here and the washer. I was hoping that I could get that in there with the worm gear, but I'm not really sure I can do that because I really didn't want to take it out tonight, but it looks like I'm going to have to. So anyway, we're going to take this steering shaft out and we'll bring you back. All right, this shim goes up in the bottom here, and these ears have a specific place they go into. So as you're putting this up in here, it's real important that you get it put in there correctly. So get it down there like that, and then we'll start putting it back up into the well, where's the tabs at? Real. Okay. Okay, crank her up before it decides to change its mind. Go. Oops. All right. Hold on. That'd be that stink pot. That was just enough of a jar for it to fall down. Okay. Okay, you got it now. Okay. That should be
A little more this way.
what there?
A little more this way.
This way?
This way.
This way. Okay.
Yep.
All right. For what we're wanting to do now, that should be plenty tight enough. So we're going to get the dial indicator and see what our amount of play is on this shaft. All right, we have it all the pressure off the jack, so it's hanging by the weight of the spindles now. See, you can move the cart. So we're going to jack this up and put the weight of the tractor on. Okay, so now we have the weight of the tractor on this, and it rose up, what did we say, about 25 thousandths, we'll say. Okay, the specification is anywhere between 0 and 32 thousandths. If it's over 32 thousandths, you change, you know, that shim that I put in underneath, it went underneath the eccentric. You change that shim and you get thicker shims, start stacking them up to get that at 32 thousandths or less. Now it says or less. It doesn't really say what or less, but I'm sure that it's got to have some play in it. So probably the closer you get it to 32, the better, okay? So at this point, we know we've got all our measurements on the steering spindle is right as far as the bearing preload, and on our steering shaft that goes in here, we have the bearings set on it. So now all we got to do is adjust the mesh between this gear and the worm gear. If we get that right, get the right amount of play in it. There's supposed to be some play in it, but when the tractor was new versus what parts we can get and everything, we'll just have to get it the best we can. So I don't know what we're going to get into, but we'll try our best. Okay. Well, what you need to find is there's this big wide slot in this eccentric down here, and I'm led to believe that that is going to be the way this one is drilled. That is going to have the most clearance. And to check that, I got a indicator here, and we got the screw out down here, and we're going to watch the indicator. We're going to move the dial indicator. Is going to show that this shaft, as long as it is sweeping that way, that means that it's the steering shaft is going to the this direction. So I can't see a thing. Still can't see much. But anyway, you get it to where your indicator basically does not show any more movement that direction, and it starts sweeping the other way, and that's going to give you the most clearance between your worm gear and your sector gear. And that's where I start my, oh no, moved. Oh well, no matter. Yeah, and well, it's like a lot of things. Ugh. All right. You've seen it started going back the other way. So now we're tightening up the farther we go. It'll go so far down and then it'll start coming back the other way. So we're at maximum clearance between the worm gear and the sector gear is the farthest apart. So we're going to lose this guy for the moment, and we're going to put the bearing and the cover that we already have set up with the proper backlash, which is 0, of course, on your bearing. But there again, I really put a little grease on there to just to stick this. I don't want to. You don't want to pack these in grease because they're not designed to be run in grease. They're designed to be ran in a heavyweight oil. The manual says transmission fluid, but most guys put this stuff called cornhead grease in there. It's kind of like it's not a grease and it's not oil. And, well, if you put transmission fluid in these, it pretty much decides it wants to go down the shaft. But I read the book and it says how much to put in here. And it says just to get to the bottom of that the sector gear. And if you do that, it really should never be to the point to where it would, the sector gear kind of goes down around goes down, the level would be above where the stem goes down into your shaft. So anyway, enough rambling. All right, so right now, so we got this put in there, and then we're gonna, it's kind of hard to tell because, but book says to have 1/2 inch of play at the wheel. Well, the wheel's right there. Let's put something that is comparable to that on here. We'll get that done.
Action.
We turn it all the way to, you put the sector in the middle, and then you basically turn the steering shaft until they move. So you mark it here, and then you mark it right there to right there. So about right there is how much. So look back there, pliers. That's how much backlash is in the gear right now. So at the rim of the wheel, that'll be, you know, with the steering wheel, that's, I mean, that much, you know. So we're going to tighten it up. So we decided that we needed to go this way, correct? Yeah, that's right, Dad. So, and it really wouldn't matter which way you go, to be honest with you, because both ways are gonna tighten it up. Okay, so let's check it now. It's not too bad. Let's we can spin this around here and goes all the way to the stop. Now, something you want to watch out for on these tractors is most of their life they've been going straight ahead, right? So the gear is worn more in the straight ahead position than it is anywhere else. So yeah, so you're gonna have, you can almost hear the tiny bit of slop here. Click, click, click. But if you go towards the end where this gear here, and right on the ends, it don't hardly have any backlash. So I feel that if you tighten it up too much, what it'll do is when you start turning the steering wheel towards those ends, it has a tendency to want to bind. So we can try to tighten it up one more and see if it'll bind. Nope, bound up. See, so that's too tight. So we'll have to back it off one. Okay, right there, I think. Hear how it makes that noise? I bet you that maybe, I bet you that's too tight the way it is right there. Well, I'm going to back it off another one because I think that's where we started from. I think this one here would be if the gear was, well, why'd you let me go the wrong way, Paul? Gosh, I went the wrong way. I can't believe that. Who is this guy? He's trying to tell other people how to work on tractors? God. I think this is where we was at. Okay. Right here ought to be the middle. I think this is probably, with the wear on the gear, this would be the safest adjustment for this particular machine, because when you get over here on the ends, it doesn't bind up. If I go one more, it starts to bind up, and what'll happen is when you're trying to turn that steering wheel and it's got a load on the front, it's gonna start catching and jerking. So you're either gonna have to live with a little bit on here, or it's gonna be binding up in the center. So perfect world, you know, I'd weld that gear up and machine it back down, but it'd probably be worse than what it is right now. So, we won't be doing too much work with this tractor anymore. So I think we'll just leave it where it's at. All right, so we've come back in here and we installed, see the screw right here? This is the locating screw, that way this eccentric doesn't turn around, so that's the stop screw. And then we tighten this nut, and the book doesn't have any specifications on this, but it's got to be really, really tight. And we put our cotter pin in here, and that should complete this. So then we come back here and kind of did the last check on it, and the way the book says that there has to be backlash present, but it doesn't have, but not excessive. So I think we have backlash, and it's about as tight as we can get it safely without it locking up. So we're going to leave this open because we're going to have to take the steering shaft in and out of this a couple of times before it's all said and done. So I'm not going to put any oil in it. But when you put oil in this, according to the book, it's supposed to just come to the bottom of this gear right here, the sector gear, just to the bottom, because your worm gear is below the center line of this gear here. So, because if you try to pull this gear out straight up, it won't come out. This is the base circle of this gear is pretty much interference with this one here if you try to pull it out. So this gear is actually below this one, and it will pull the oil up into this mesh So I think a lot of times that these may be overfilled, and that's why a lot of people are having problems with these leaking down the stem, is because of that. So I don't know, but we're not going to put any oil in it at the moment because, like I said, we're going to have that steering shaft in and out doing other things. But we are done with this for the moment. We're probably next going to put the yoke for the front wheel on there.